You deserve the world, Marilyn. Let me take care of everything. Trevor's words echoed in my mind as I stared at the shattered remains of my favorite serving platter on the kitchen floor. The irony wasn't lost on me. My name is Marilyn, and I used to believe those promises. Mom, are you okay? Ashton's voice startled me. I turned to see my stepson standing in the doorway, his brow furrowed with concern. I'm fine, sweetie. Just dropped a plate. I forced a smile, bending to pick up the pieces. Ashton rushed to help. Let me do that. Dad always says you're clumsy in the kitchen. I froze, the words stinging more than any cut from the broken ceramic could. Your father says that? Ashton's eyes widened, realizing his mistake. I mean, not always. Just sometimes. I straightened up, suddenly aware of how small I felt in my own home. It's okay, Ashton. I've got this. Why don't you go finish your homework? As he left, I caught a glimpse of myself in the window reflection. When had I started looking so diminished? The front door slammed, and Trevor's voice boomed through the house. Honey, I'm home. Something smells great. I quickly dumped the broken platter in the trash and plastered on a smile. In the kitchen, dear. Trevor swept in, all charm and confidence. He kissed my cheek, then frowned at my hands. You're not cooking like that, are you? Go clean up. I'll order takeout. But I've already started dash. Marilyn. His tone left no room for argument. Let me take care of it. You know I like things done right. As I washed my hands, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. This wasn't the man I'd fallen in love with, the one who'd promised me the world. This was someone else entirely. I dried my hands and took a deep breath. It was time to face the truth. The dream I'd been living was unraveling, and I needed to decide what to do about it. The perfect family I thought I had was nothing but an illusion, and it was cracking more every day. Little did I know, this moment of clarity would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. My journey from housewife to, well, that's getting ahead of the story. But trust me, revenge has never tasted so sweet. I stared at the ATM screen in disbelief. Insufficient funds? I muttered, trying again. Same result. Problem, dear? Trevor's voice made me jump. I hadn't heard him approach. I can't withdraw any money, I said, turning to face him. Trevor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I moved some things around in our accounts. For tax purposes, you understand. I didn't understand, but I nodded anyway. How am I supposed to buy groceries? Use this, he said, handing me a credit card. I'll take care of the bills. It's easier if I manage everything. As we drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. When had I lost control of my own finances? At home, Ashton was sprawled on the couch, playing video games. Hey, Dad. How about we order pizza? Trevor grinned. Great idea, son. Marilyn was just saying she didn't feel like cooking tonight. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died on my lips. What was the point? Later that evening, I was in the kitchen, organizing my recipe cards when Ashton wandered in. What are you doing? He asked, peering over my shoulder. Just sorting some recipes. I was thinking of starting a cooking blog. Ashton snorted. A blog? Who'd want to read that? Well, I dash. Dad says your cooking is okay, but nothing special, Ashton continued, grabbing a soda from the fridge. He says you should focus on keeping the house nice instead. I felt like I'd been slapped. Your father said that? Ashton shrugged, already losing interest. Something like that. Hey, can you wash my uniform? I need it for tomorrow. As I stood there, clutching my recipe cards, I realized how small my world had become. When had I stopped being a person with dreams and become just a housekeeper? That night, lying next to Trevor, I whispered, I was thinking of taking some cooking classes. Trevor mumbled, not looking up from his phone. Cooking classes, I repeated. To improve my skills. Trevor finally glanced at me. Why? Your cooking is fine. Besides, we can't afford unnecessary expenses right now. But Dash. Marilyn, he cut me off, his tone final. Let me handle things. That's what I'm here for, remember? As Trevor rolled over and started snoring, I stared at the ceiling, feeling more alone than ever. The dream I'd had of a loving partnership was unraveling before my eyes, and I didn't know how to stop it. I stood on my mother's porch, my hand hovering over the doorbell. Taking a deep breath, I pressed it. Evelyn opened the door, her face lighting up. Marilyn, what a lovely surprise. As soon as I stepped inside, the familiar scent of cinnamon and apples enveloped me. Mom's house always smelled like comfort. Sit down, dear. I'll make us some tea, Evelyn said, bustling into the kitchen. I sank into the worn armchair, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease for the first time in weeks. Mom returned with 2 steaming mugs. "Now, tell me what's wrong." I blinked, surprised. "What makes you think something's wrong?" Evelyn gave me a knowing look. "A mother knows, Marilyn. You've got that same look you had when you were 7 and Billy Thompson stole your lunch money." I couldn't help but laugh, even as tears pricked my eyes. "Oh, Mom." And then it all came pouring out. Trevor's controlling behavior, Ashton's snide comments, the isolation I felt in my own home. Mom listened, her face growing more concerned with each word. When I finished, Evelyn set down her mug and took my hands in hers. "Marilyn, listen to me. You are smart, talented, and stronger than you know. Don't let anyone make you doubt that, not even your husband." "But what if I'm overreacting?" I whispered. "Trevor says I'm too sensitive." "Nonsense," Mom said firmly. "Trust your instincts, dear. They've never led you astray before." We spent the afternoon talking, laughing, and even baking an apple pie, just like we used to. As the warm, sweet aroma filled the kitchen, I felt a spark of something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. "You know," Mom said as we waited for the pie to cool, "I still have all your old cookbooks in the attic. The ones you used to pore over for hours." I smiled at the memory. I'd forgotten about those. "Maybe it's time to dust them off," she suggested. "Remind yourself of the passion you once had." As I drove home that evening, my mother's words echoed in my mind. The seed of an idea began to take root, a way to reclaim a part of myself I'd lost. Pulling into the driveway, I saw Trevor's car already there. My stomach clenched, but I took a deep breath, remembering Mom's advice. "Trust your instincts," I murmured. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of defiance. It was time to make a change, and I knew exactly where to start. Those old cookbooks were calling my name, and with them, a chance to rediscover the woman I used to be. I spent days perfecting my beef bourguignon, determined to make this family dinner special. As I set the table, a flutter of excitement filled my chest. Maybe this would be the night things changed. Trevor waltzed in, Ashton trailing behind. "Smells good in here," Trevor said, loosening his tie. "It's beef bourguignon," I replied, smiling. "I've been working on it all day." Ashton wrinkled his nose. "Sounds fancy. Can't we just order pizza?" "Let's try your mother's cooking first," Trevor said, his tone patronizing. "We can always order later if it's not up to par." We sat down, and I served the meal with trembling hands. Trevor took a bite, his face unreadable. "It's interesting," he said finally. "Interesting," I echoed. "Well, it's a bit heavy," Trevor continued. "And the meat's a tad overcooked." Ashton pushed his plate away. "Yeah, it's kind of dry. Can I be excused?" Now, Trevor said, his voice dripping with false kindness. "Your mother tried her best. It's not her fault she's not cut out for gourmet cooking." Something inside me snapped. "Not cut out for it? I've been cooking for this family for years." Trevor's eyes narrowed. "Don't raise your voice, Marilyn. It's unbecoming." "Unbecoming?" I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'll tell you what's unbecoming, the way you two treat me." Ashton snickered. "Geez, Mom, calm down. It's just food." "It's not just food," I said, my voice shaking. "It's years of being belittled, criticized, and taken for granted." "I'm done." Trevor stood up, his face thunderous. "Marilyn, you're embarrassing yourself. Sit down and finish your meal." But I was beyond caring. "No, Trevor. I won't sit down. I won't be quiet. And I certainly won't stay in this toxic environment anymore." "What are you saying?" Trevor's voice was dangerously low. "I'm saying I'm leaving," I replied, surprised at the steadiness in my voice. "Tonight." Ashton's jaw dropped. "Mom, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life," I said, looking from Trevor to Ashton. "I deserve better than this. And I'm going to find it." As I walked out of the dining room, I heard Trevor call after me. "You'll be back. You've got nowhere else to go." But he was wrong. I had my mother, my old cookbooks, and a newfound determination. As I packed a bag, my hands were steady. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. Stepping out into the cool night air, I took a deep breath. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was reclaiming my life one step at a time. The spare room at Mom's house felt like a sanctuary. I unpacked my meager belongings, realizing how little I truly owned after years of marriage. "Marilyn," Mom called from downstairs. "I've made some tea. Come down when you're ready." In the kitchen, the familiar scent of chamomile enveloped me. Mom pushed a steaming mug across the table. "So, what's your plan?" I sighed. "I honestly don't know. I haven't worked in years." Nonsense, Mom said firmly. You've been working harder than anyone I know. It's time to put those skills to use for yourself. Her words sparked an idea. My cookbooks. I wonder if I could start a blog. Mom's eyes lit up. That's perfect. You've always had a way with food and words. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into creating Marilyn's Kitchen Chronicles. Each post felt like a small act of rebellion against years of criticism. One morning, as I was photographing a batch of cinnamon rolls, my phone buzzed. It was Trevor. Marilyn, this has gone on long enough. Come home. I took a deep breath. No, Trevor. This is my home now. Don't be ridiculous. What about our family? Family? I laughed bitterly. When was the last time you treated me like family? There was a long pause. You'll regret this, he said finally, before hanging up. My hands shook as I set down the phone, but I felt stronger than ever. Weeks turned into months. My blog gained followers, each comment boosting my confidence. Then one day an email arrived that changed everything. Dear Marilyn, it read, we love your blog and would like to discuss the possibility of turning it into a cookbook. I stared at the screen, hardly daring to believe it. Mom found me there, tears streaming down my face. Honey, what's wrong? I showed her the email, my voice choked with emotion. They want to publish my recipes, Mom. They think I have talent. Mom hugged me tightly. Of course you do. I've always known it. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how far I'd come. From a woman who couldn't withdraw her own money to a soon-to-be published author. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the future. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter what Trevor or anyone else said, I would never let anyone dim my light again. This was my new path, and I was going to walk it with my head held high. I was in the middle of a live cooking demonstration for my blog when my phone buzzed incessantly. Ignoring it, I finished the stream, feeling elated by the flood of positive comments. As I cleaned up, I finally checked my messages. Dozens of missed calls from Ashton and a cryptic text. Dad's in trouble. Call me. My heart raced as I dialed Ashton's number. He answered on the first ring. Mom, it's bad. Dad's been suspended from work. There's talk of embezzlement and an affair. I sank into a chair, stunned. What? Ashton's voice cracked. They're saying he's been cooking the books for years. And there are photos of him with his secretary. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, Trevor had controlled every aspect of our finances, claiming I couldn't be trusted. Now it seemed he was the untrustworthy one. That's not all, Ashton continued, his voice small. I've been suspended from school. Academic misconduct. I closed my eyes, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. What happened? I cheated on some exams. Dad always said grades were everything, and I couldn't keep up. In that moment, I saw clearly how Trevor's toxic influence had shaped us both. Oh, Ashton. Mom, can you come home? Please. Dad's a mess, and I don't know what to do. I took a deep breath, realizing this was a pivotal moment. Ashton, listen to me. You're an adult now. It's time to take responsibility for your actions, just like I did when I left. But Dash. No buts. I can't come back and fix this for you or your father. That's not my job anymore. There was a long silence. Then, I understand. I'm sorry, Mom. For everything. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen processing. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing Trevor's carefully constructed facade crumble. But mostly I felt sad for the years wasted, the damage done. My phone buzzed again, an email from my publisher. Great news! Your cookbook proposal has been accepted. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss details. I stared at the screen, a slow smile spreading across my face. As Trevor's world collapsed, mine was expanding in ways I'd never imagined. That night, I called Mom to share the news. I'm so proud of you, honey, she said, her voice warm. You've come so far. As I lay in bed, I thought about the strange twists life can take. A year ago, I was trapped in a loveless marriage, my dreams forgotten. Now, I was on the cusp of a new career, finally living life on my own terms. Tomorrow, I'd face new challenges. But for now, I savored the sweet taste of justice and the even sweeter flavor of success. The doorbell rang just as I was pulling a tray of lemon bars from the oven. I opened the door to find Jenna, my oldest friend, looking flustered. Marilyn, we need to talk, she said, brushing past me into the kitchen. I set down the tray, concern growing. What's wrong? Jenna took a deep breath. It's about Trevor. I've uncovered something you need to know. Over the next hour, Jenna laid out a web of financial deceit that made my head spin. Hidden debts, offshore accounts, and a trail of lies that stretched back years. How did you find all this? I asked, stunned. I work at the bank, remember? When I heard rumors about Trevor's suspension, I started digging. Marilyn, he's been living a double life for years. I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. I knew things were bad, but this. Jenna reached across the table, squeezing my hand. There's more. The community needs to know. Trevor's been borrowing money from half the town, promising impossible returns. Oh God, I whispered. What should we do? Jenna's eyes flashed with determination. We tell the truth. All of it. The next few days were a whirlwind. Jenna and I worked tirelessly, compiling evidence and reaching out to Trevor's victims. When we finally went public with the information, the response was overwhelming. My phone rang constantly with calls from shocked neighbors and friends. Some were angry, demanding to know if I'd been complicit. Others offered support, praising my courage for coming forward. Through it all, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. The man I'd married, the life I'd lived for so long, had been built on lies. One evening, as I scrolled through the flood of supportive messages on my blog, I received a text from Ashton. Mom, I'm sorry. For everything. Can we talk? Before I could reply, another message popped up, from Trevor. You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy. I stared at the screen, a wave of emotions washing over me. Then, slowly, I deleted Trevor's message and typed a response to Ashton. Yes, we can talk. But on my terms this time. As I hit send, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For years, I'd lived in Trevor's shadow, doubting myself at every turn. Now, with the truth laid bare and the community rallying around me, I finally felt free. That night, as I prepared for a live cooking segment on my increasingly popular blog, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. The woman staring back at me was stronger, wiser, and more alive than she'd been in years. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them, one recipe at a time. I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by the aroma of freshly baked bread and the soft glow of afternoon sunlight. My cookbook, From Heartache to Happiness, A Culinary Journey, sat on the counter, its cover gleaming. The doorbell chimed, and I opened it to find Mom beaming at me. Ready for our big adventure? She asked, eyes twinkling. I grinned, grabbing my suitcase. More than ready. As we drove to the airport for our surprise Mediterranean cruise, a celebration of my book deal and her unwavering support, I couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed in a year. Penny for your thoughts? Mom asked, glancing at me. I smiled, just thinking about how far we've come. How far I've come. She reached over, squeezing my hand. You've always had it in you, Marilyn. You just needed to believe in yourself. At the airport, my phone buzzed with a message from Ashton. Have a great trip, Mom. I'm proud of you. I felt a warmth in my chest. Our relationship was still healing, but it was progress. As we settled into our seats on the plane, Mom turned to me. I've been thinking about starting a little garden. Maybe you could feature some of my veggies in your next cookbook. I laughed, feeling a surge of love for this woman who'd never stopped believing in me. I'd love that, Mom. We'll make it a family affair. The plane took off, and as we soared above the clouds, I thought about Trevor. Last I'd heard, he was facing legal troubles, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. I felt a twinge of sadness for what could have been, but no regret. I pulled out my notebook, jotting down ideas for my next project. A cookbook about healing, about finding strength in unexpected places, about the power of good food and even better company. As the coastline disappeared beneath us, I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. I'd once believed Trevor when he said he'd give me the world. Now I realized I'd found something far more valuable. The strength to create my own. Mom nudged me gently. Look, she whispered, pointing out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. It was breathtaking, a canvas of possibilities stretching out before us. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that the best was yet to come. My story wasn't ending, it was just beginning. And this time, I was the author, writing each chapter on my own terms. As the plane carried us towards new adventures, I smiled, feeling truly free for the first time in years. The future was mine to shape, one recipe at a time, and I couldn't wait to see what delicious surprises it held.